What was the creepiest thing you saw while visiting someone at their house? I went to visit a neighbor who had just moved into a bigger home. She had 11 children. I sat down at the kitchen counter as my neighbor was getting us tea. All of a sudden, the dishwasher slowly opens from the inside, and out crawled a kid. Couldn't have been more than 18 months old. Kid looks at me, then crawls away. I thought I was on camera being punked somehow, but my friend never saw it and never skipped a beat in whatever she was talking about. It was weird, and the kid was creepy. 11 kids and only so many hours in a day. Gotta get them all clean somehow. Props for self-bathing at 18 months old. Was it actually your neighbor's kid or just some standard dishwasher kid? She had 11 children. That's scary enough. 11 kids? Was the previous home a shoe? Probably it was the dishwasher. Bad case of child labor. That sucks. You'll have to find a replacement dishwashing operation technician to replace the one that quit and left their station. Not something I saw, but I slept over at a friend's house whose grandma lived with the family because she was so old and losing her marbles. While getting ready for bed, my friend told me, "Don't worry if you wake up and see my grandma standing over you while you sleep. Sometimes she forgets who my friends are. Just tell her grandma it's okay. Go back to bed and it'll be fine." It was in that moment that I realized I had made a terrible mistake deciding to sleep over. I thank my deep sleeping every day that I did not wake up in the middle of the night because an old woman was standing over me, watching. I did end up with bed bugs though, which is why I never went over again. I did end up with bed bugs though. This is honestly scarier, worse than the grandma part. I have bed bugs. Skeptical smiley face. Oh, if you see a little ghost girl singing nursery rhymes in the corner there, just throw a piece of cheese at her and it'll be fine. Yeah, I was totally fine until I got to the end, then I shuddered. Bed bugs for a cabinet full of poo? God, I've been waiting for an excuse to tell this story. So I went to an art show with my GF and we met a nice girl. She's very talkative. Well, she was with my GF. I'm shy until I've had a drink or know someone. So I had a drink. This girl we met, I no holds barred. Will tell you anything. No filters. You ask, she tells. Cut to the good bit. Party's ending and this girl says come back to ours. Her boyfriend was there too, but we hadn't really spoke for a drink. Sounds great. Let's go. So we enter their home and we've all had a drink. I spot a bobblehead of John Cusack from Say Anything holding up a ghetto blaster. So drunkenly say, "Cool, I love John Cusack." Pleasant conversations are had. Drinks are had. I'm talking to her. My GF is talking to him. It's been about 20 minutes when I just stop suddenly and take another quick gander at the massive display case in the back of the room. Is that a cabinet full of turds? She got so excited and he looked ashamed. It turns out they were all plastic poos and some more collectible items she had a fascination with. The story behind the first poo sellers. Door-to-door poo salesmen and practical joke providers. Apparently, if I recall correctly, there was a heated rivalry between two leading poo manufacturers. She had specimens of both their works and lots of newer, much more realistic ones. It was quite the look on my GF's face when she realized she had also not noticed a cabinet of poo for almost half an hour. And these were top-quality fakes. I was convinced several of them were real. My other favorite moment was when me and her were sat on the floor looking throughout her record collection and somehow the conversation turned to comic books. I mentioned I collected comic books and graphic novels. "Do you like Japanese comics?" she asked excitedly. "Nothing against them," I said. "Art's usually really good." Quote. Her face lit up and she was almost standing excitedly heading to the door when her boyfriend just nonchalantly says, "Do not get the porn out." Quote. I've never seen anyone so disappointed. So in answer to the question, the cabinet of poo definitely took the prize, but if he hadn't intervened, I'm pretty sure hardcore Japanese comic book porn may have given it a run for its money. So relieved this didn't end up being real poop. Sounds like her BF was really over her shit. Geez, what an interesting sounding person. Genuinely gotta respect the enthusiasm. I just like how the boyfriend is very nonchalant about the whole thing. How often does this happen to the poor fella? Are you guys still friends with a couple? She sounds delightful. Japanese comic book porn is practically vanilla now. I went with a friend to this guy's house that she was seeing. She said he had a lot of collectibles, which is fairly normal since we are both collectors ourselves. We walk into his very large house. I'm pretty sure it had 5 bedrooms. And every surface, literally every surface, was covered in figurines. I'm talking about the edges of the staircase, the banister, in between the slats on the handrail, the kitchen counters, the coffee table, the tops of the cabinets, the edge of the bathroom sink, the window sills, hanging from doorways. There were countless bookshelves and display cases overflowing with collectible items nothing about. The collectibles were creepy. It was just your run-of-the-mill nerd stuff, but oh my god. The sheer amount. It felt like a sarcophagus. Talk about a dusting nightmare. That's unsettling at best. I'd have recurring nightmares after that. And I love your username. When does collecting become hoarding? Saw something similar when we were house hunting. They obviously had ties to the Netherlands because every single surface was packed with Dutch figurines, windmills, clogs, in all shapes, colors and sizes. I tried to imagine dusting it all, because the house was immaculate. As someone who can't afford any of the collectibles I want, I'm rather jealous. I was at sleepover and we were watching a movie in their shed. And since we were 10 it got scary, so we went back into the house and we passed by this, what we thought was a toy snake. It was humongous. Anyway, she brushes it off saying it was probably her brother's. And we went inside. I mentioned it to her mum saying it was so cool and she was like, what toy snake? Turns out it was a 2-meter snake that finally was venomous. I'm Australian. Australia. Shudders. When I was younger, my brother went to grab his belt off the bed and grabbed a snake instead. It got in the house and on his bed. Chills. Oh god. Reminds me of when I was about 8ish and I was at a friend's farm. Both sets of our parents were doing something in the paddock and we were alone playing in the house. We opened up her dollhouse and were greeted with a giant eastern brown snake coiled up inside. We slammed that dollhouse shut and ran screaming to our parents, who came back and dealt with it. Yo dude, I've had an experience like this, I shit you not. With my sister and dad on a nearby island. Found a snake that looked dead under a tree right on the edge of the beach, so it was in sand. We poked it with sticks a bit. It didn't move an inch. Dad told us to leave it. Then when we came back through, obviously we wanted to look at it again, but it was gone and there was a track in the sand of it slithering off into the bush. I'm Australian. Why am I not surprised? You mean venomous. Danger noodle. OYEAH. Why do you have toy snakes? They should be forbidden in a place where so many snakes and other animals can kill you at home. Jesus Christ. My uncle had an entire room of pornography, magazines and DVDs, just laying around. Stacks of magazines and boxes of videotapes. I stumbled upon it by accident when I was playing hide and seek with my cousin. He yelled at me that I couldn't go look at his dad's dirty books. Me, being a dumbass, asked why he didn't just clean them. Me, being a dumbass, asked why he didn't just clean them. That's actually really cute. How old were you? Had a sleepover at a friend's when I was around 12. The dad sat at the dinner table in only his tighty-whities and didn't say a single word. The entire family was clearly intimidated by him, as no one else said a single word for the entire meal either. I never slept over again. That's sad. Shit like this was not uncommon when I was growing up. Not the tighty-whities specifically. I remember a handful of times I went to someone's house and the entire family clearly catered to the dad's anger issues. always the places I hated the most. Sounds like my dad. I was visiting a friend as a child and she let me peek into her older sister's room. It was completely red. Red lacquered walls. Red rug. Red bedspread. Lamp with a red light bulb in it. 11-year-old me was horrified. The room was decorated by a shady indie horror game developer. Red means scary. Red rum. Red rum. Sounds kinda kinky NGL. I bet she was hungry 24/7. His 3 dogs sitting on his mantle. They were stuffed after they died. That's rough. Oof. Rowdy and Steven has a litter mate, and afterward he took them to the taxidermist. I had an acquaintance who invited me to his home for a party. The guy was an amputee due to a diabetic foot. I think 'cause I didn't pry. But a few years back when he got it amputated, he decided it would be cool to get the bone kept. So this foot bone is used as a paperweight on his desk right now. Was creepy when I saw it. Now I kinda think it's cool. I think he got the idea off an article once of some guy doing the same thing. There was a dude on Reddit who ate his amputated foot. I wonder if that's where he got the idea. Carpeted bathroom. One time I went to a friend's wedding reception, which was in a Mormon church. The reception was in the church's indoor basketball court, which was carpeted. The reasoning was that the carpet makes it quieter for people who are praying. We had a carpeted bathroom and kitchen growing up. It was super short carpet, but still. That was how the builder designed it. The late 80s were really odd. One time a sack of potatoes was left forgotten in a dark corner of the pantry. On carpet. Spoiler alert. We didn't have a very clean home. We always had flies, but there were more than usual. Well, I found those potatoes had liquefied into the carpet with a manner of things and maggots growing in and around them. I'll never forget the smell. Since I discovered it, I had to clean it. 0 would not recommend. I'll do one better. We once toured a house with a master bath where the wall had been taken down. One side bedroom, one side bathroom, carpeting going about halfway into the bathroom, toilet out in the open, glass door on the shower. It was bizarre. My friend just removed 5 layers of carpet from a bathroom. So much smell. The bathroom Elvis died in at Graceland was carpeted. Carpeted bathrooms are super weird. Like, yuck. My next-door neighbors when I was a kid had carpeted walls in their living room. Weird as fuck. My bathroom has a tile floor, but my parents insist on putting a rug over it. Insist they managed to ruin a perfectly good bathroom. And that's even before the mushrooms. The friend's mom's boyfriend always leers at her daughter's friends. Bonus if they're under 12. Congratulations. You win. I hope the daughter is okay. Chilly. Back in high school, a longtime friend of mine used to work for a stereotypical eccentric rich guy. Mainly charity and nonprofit stuff. But he collected the rarest historical memorabilia. And my friend was giving me an unofficial tour of the room where this guy stored everything. Two that freaked me out were Haitian slave shackles from colonial times and a cracked voodoo doll that was supposedly haunted. Nope. No thank you, sir. Do you want ghosts? Because that's how you get ghosts. I dunno, man. If I was a ghost, I wouldn't want my soul tied down to something as shitty as my own shackles. My husband and I were house shopping. We go with a realtor to view this one house that was super nice. Checked all of our boxes. And within our price range. The first thing we noticed is there were security cameras in every single room. Even in the bedrooms, odd but whatever. We finally get to the master bedroom where there was a shrine of a maybe 5-year-old girl above the master bed. There were old bouquets of flowers and candles surrounding the shrine, which led us to believe the little girl was deceased. They even kept the girl's bedroom fully intact. We noped out so quick. They pulled the house off the market the next day. We suspect they were watching us on their surveillance. There's a hidden story there. I'd want to know. I wonder if she was deceased like it seems. If they were so obsessed with trying to contact her spirit like on the ghost hunting shows and had all those cameras up to try and catch any possible activity. While house shopping, we found a huge house on a hill that was really affordable with a huge yard, garage and shed. We found out why it was so cheap. Among other things, this house had a cat piss smell in the shag carpeting downstairs, had one closet with so much black mold in it that it resembled the black living organism in House on Haunted Hill. The original attached garage was converted into a workspace with 2 adjacent rooms. They were both essentially 10 by 10 by 10 cement rooms. The first had a carpet, cowboy wallpaper, a bed and a lamp, like it was for a young boy. The second only had a light bulb and a stain in the corner of this cement cell. The upstairs looked like everything was waterlogged and the paint was peeling and the walls were slightly crooked. The stairs, which were horrible and crooked as well, had an automated assistance lift that made them unusable. The downstairs wiring was so old there were old-timey fuses in the fuse box. And among other reasons, the bank wouldn't finance this loan. Edit. Spelling clarification. Addendum. The cement cell room always reminds me of the creepypasta Where's Just This Thing with its head pointed at the corner. The house mysteriously burned down 2 years later. Sounds like shit right out of The Boy. My guess is that they set up all those cameras hoping to capture the girl's ghost on video because they miss her too much. The child might have had a severe illness, disability, and they hired professional carers. Occasionally people put cameras in their houses to keep an eye on the workers. And maybe the child, especially if they experience seizures. Not necessarily visiting, but for a couple months I lived in a house with an older woman, late 80s, whom I provided care for in exchange for room and board, rather than paying rent. Her late husband had been a doll maker and I'm not sure if he still does, but at one time he held the Guinness World Record for the smallest doll with moving parts made without a magnifying glass. The parlor was lined with glass cabinets showing some of his best and favorite dolls. Nobody really hung out in that room because it was supposed to be kept nice for visitors. I wasn't even allowed to sit on the couches. So for the whole time I was living there, that room always had a musty, impersonal feel to it, even though it was cleaned and dusted regularly. I passed through that room every once in a while to look out the front window or on my way from my bedroom to the kitchen. Every once in a while I would take a quick peek into the glass cabinet and check up on my favorite dolls. That's when I started to notice that the dolls would change directions. They'd be facing front the first time I looked at them, but later in the day they'd be facing the side or the back. I told the owner about this and she said she never noticed it, but nobody could have been moving it because the cabinets were all locked with a key she kept in a secret place in her bedroom. The only people who ever came into the house were me, her sister, her brother-in-law, her grandkids, and the cleaning lady once a week. The majority of the time I was just the two of us and her family hardly went into that room anyways. I always thought it was weird, but I never really thought it was that scary. Good thing she kept them locked up, which is a totally normal human thing to do about dolls that don't move around on their own at all. Reminds me of the mystery of the artifact that turned by itself. It was discovered that vibrations was what caused it to turn. His parents doing stuff, and when I walked into his room he flashed me. Gauging your response. You almost joined the cult. Should have flashed back to assert dominance. I had a male friend who seemed pretty normal. He was a shy nerd who had a bit of trouble making friends. We bonded over video games and anime. He left the room to greet another friend at the door. He had a notepad under his pillow and it had really detailed, beautiful drawings of me. It was flattering until I flipped further. There were pictures of me. Some were printed out screenshots of my Insta posts or friends' Snap stories. But others were just pictures of me in class or at the mall, and they weren't pictures taken to my knowledge or accidentally. He was incel neckbeard type. We stopped hanging out after that. He started getting really creepy and pushy, and so I cut all contact with him. Christ, that's horrible. Also having your trust broken like that by a friend. Did you ever confront him? In high school there was a weird guy. Quiet, weeb, furry, scaly. Always gave off a school shooter vibe. He happened to overlap in friend groups with mine, so I befriended him. One day in study hall he told me about his notebook. It was full of furry porn that he drew. Then he showed me. I was not expecting really high quality art from him. But if I was a furry I'd pay commission for his work. Then I saw names. My friends, our friends, teachers, my own name. He then explained if he considered you a friend, you got a fursona and porn drawn of you. So somewhere in a hopefully long forgotten notebook there's furry porn drawn in my likeness. It was morning and their mom put milk before cereal and she warmed up the milk. It was the summer. Horrible times. Nasty. When I was in kindergarten my mom took us on a family vacation to visit some distant cousins in England. The first night at their house the mom heated an entire glass bottle of milk in the oven. The entire house ended up smelling of rancid milk. I thought I was going to throw up from the stench alone. The whole family kept pressing me to have some while the children guzzled full glasses of steamy, hot milk. I ended up drinking some because they told me I was being rude for refusing it. To make matters worse, it turns out I'm lactose intolerant, and their ancient toilet broke during the night. We never spoke to that branch of the family again. Mom's drunk. Some people are so sick. God, what kind of world do we live in? My parents did this for us when we were young. This is because they're from India and when they were growing up they would get fresh unpasteurized milk. So they had to heat up milk before using it because you have to kill the bacteria. Even though we were purchasing pasteurized milk from the grocery store, the habit was hard to break. Okay, so this took place like 2008-2009 when I was at this kid's house. We weren't really friends, I just felt bad for him. He was bullied and was the lonely kid. But anyway, one day our parents arranged for us to have a sleepover at his house. And oh boy, I was nervous. Especially because we all knew his dad was a drunk. But nonetheless I came that night. Now the night went normal and I saw a side of the kid I hadn't seen at school. We plays on his PSP-like system. I think it was knockoff. But after that things went downhill. We were watching an Adam Sandler movie. Don't remember the name. When the kid asked if I wanted to see his dad's work projects, I happily said yes. I knew his dad did shit with house renovations, so I was excited. We went to the garage and his dad's desk was there. The kid showed me shit that his dad was working on, but it was just a lot paperwork type shit. He kept opening drawers frantically as if he were looking for something when he pulled out what I thought was a comic. At first it was colorful and had bright comic vibes, but had real images of brutal car accidents and other deaths. I remember they had captions of sly remarks which would go something like, if there was one of a brutal tiger attack it would say, "Cat's got your tongue," and weird other remarks like that. The kid laughed at it and referred to it as his dad's death books. There were a few others of the same fashion. I'm still to this day scared for life because of this, to the point that when I got home I didn't even tell my mom. Aside friends, this is the first time I'm speaking of it. If you'd like further answers, feel free to drop a reply to ask. That's fucked. Almost sounds like his dad was someone who gets turned on watching people die. I don't remember the proper term for it, but yes, it's a real kink. Do you remember the name or brand of these magazines? I've never heard of anything like that before. Oh man, I've got one. I met this guy and I was super interested. He had his own home, nice car, nice belongings, really motivated, polite, a gentleman, owned his own business, same moral compass. I finally found someone that matched my lifestyle. Well, after a month or so we decided I'd meet him at his place for a movie and breakfast we made. eggs and hash browns and had great conversation together before moving to the living room to watch the movie. On the TV was his computer screen and there was a folder on his toolbar that said, "Stalking." I was weirded out but figured it was just a funny file name. I asked him about it and he got all excited and showed me how he found all the private Facebook, Instagram profiles of various girls he had messaged with online. When I asked how he found this, he showed me how, and then he proceeded to show me how he could even look at the photos these different women had set as private in Facebook. Fucking creepy. But also I tend to find them on Facebook before I agree to meet, so my spidey senses went off, but not crazy. What did make my spidey senses crazy was when he told me he was in the neighborhood right next to mine and offered to swing over. Revolving light, revolving light, revolving light. I had never told him where I live. Revolving light, revolving light, revolving light. I broke things off and never spoke to him again. Edit. Breakfast with him was not the first meeting. The fact he named the folder stalking meant he knew exactly what he was doing. Good thing he never went to your home after you broke things off. Then again, he might be outside right now. Open mouth face. But why would he be proud to show that off? We were friends with a lady that rented the house we now own. She took us on a tour since we hadn't been inside before. There had been crackheads living there previously. We found at least one bag of drugs and a jar full of adult teeth floating around in God knows what. Turns out she was a psycho too, and a few towns, including ours, are looking for her for unpaid bills. She also left a lot of paperwork behind that was in regards to her boyfriend's murder charge. It wasn't creepy as much as strange. We were house hunting and one of the oddest homes we saw was one where they had added an extra bedroom on one side of a bathroom. It would have been bad enough if you had to walk through the bathroom to enter the bedroom. But because of limited space, you had to walk through the shower recess itself. I can only imagine the frustrations if you didn't plan ahead when someone wanted to take a shower. In 2009, I went to go get my hair cut by my friend's mother when I was in my early teens. Our families were pretty close and our moms have always been friends. I should note that my friend started doing homeschool in 2007. My friend's mom came home late, so my hair appointment was pushed back until midnight at her place. I pressured my mom to get me there and to come with me to show her I wasn't lying and that I needed the haircut before my grade 8 graduation ceremony. The ride to our friend's place was roughly 5 minutes, which was faster than usual since traffic is dead during midnight hours. And we got out of the car just shy of parking in their driveway. We parked across the street to our friend's place because my mom wanted to read a garage sale sign on a pole. Just before entering our friend's house, this car pulls up in front of me and my mom and snaps a photo of us. The flash was so bright and the only thing I saw before the flash was a silhouette of a man in short spiky hair similar to my friend's brother. A hairstyle not too popular in my area because it was quite punkish. I couldn't recognize the car since it was dark. All I know is that it was a sedan just like my friend's brother's car. Once this person snapped the photo of us, he drove off. My mom and I were confused for a split second and we both ran inside. My mom confided in my mom's friend about what just happened and my mom's friend was also confused. But her confusion looked contrived and didn't speak much that night. I thanked her for the haircut and wanted her to take my money that I saved up for the haircut. After that night, I didn't try to contact my friend or her mom until after graduation. I wanted to let her mom know that everyone loved my new look at graduation. I couldn't get a hold of anyone and they no longer live in that house. It was as if they were never really there. I wonder if they were in witness protection. How about your mom? Did they ever contacted each other after? A stuffed leopard that the granddad killed in Kenya many years ago. Those beady eyes stared at you no matter which part of the room you went. My friend's dad, the way he was looking at me and said I should wear that shirt again next time. This is a bit of a long one. In college, my friends and I made friends with one of the local bartenders. As you do. And when we were seniors and about to graduate, he invited us over to his place for a barbecue to celebrate our graduation. We thought it was super sweet, and one of my friends had worked at that bar for him for a while, so we felt comfortable going. A bit of background info. The friends who went to the barbecue are black. I'm white. The bartender and his partner are both white. This took place in the American South. You may see where this is headed. We pulled up to his place and we were all kind of in awe at how nice it was. It was on a big plot of land and had a nice garden, a 3 or 4 car garage, a really nice patio with an outside kitchen. The works. We hung outside for a while eating, drinking, chatting, etc. before eventually the bar owner offered to give us a tour. We walk into his house and I was a little overwhelmed at everything inside. It was all really big, antique-looking furniture. Lots of dark colors and lots of random trinkets everywhere. We haven't made it past the first few rooms when he offers to get some more drinks. So he's in the kitchen grabbing them while his partner, my friends, and a few other people who joined are all sitting in one of his living rooms. We're having a nice time and I'm just kinda looking around and suddenly I notice a weird little figurine. My eyes bulged when I realized it was one of those racist blackface figurines of a little boy carrying a sack of what looked like cotton. All of a sudden I'm looking all around the room and I see them everywhere. It was that thing where once you see it you can't stop seeing it. There must have been 15 in that room alone. I nudge my friend who's beside me, trying not to draw attention, and kind of give a nod to where the first figurine was. My friend sees and just stares for a while and then looks around. Like I did, seeing all of the others come out of the woodwork. She nudges our other friend and he notices and we all just kind of sit uncomfortably trying not to nervously laugh or something. We finished the tour and they just kept coming. The guy must have had at least 100 of them. The movie Get Out had recently been released, so after the tour we quickly came up with an excuse to GTFO. That's creepy and disgusting as hell. We found a big-ass snake skin in their garage. The snake was never found. It was eaten by an even bigger snake. Imagine finding a python shed skin in your attic. I fix computers and go to people's houses from time to time to do so. One day a guy who looked a vampire answered the door. He had black curtains, red walls, a literal Damam shrine with a pentagram, goat skull, incense and all. He was pasty white, whiter than me, and I am a ginger, wearing a black silk suit and had dark ETE circles. I walked in, looked around for about a minute as he showed me where his desk was, then pretended to get an emergency text and notepad the fuck out of there. Not about to be your next sacrifice or hex, my dude. Missed your chance to be in what we do in the shadows. Somewhere a random goth is laughing with his friends over the time his aesthetic scared a guy so much that he ran away. Sure, that just wasn't Glenn Danzig. LMAOO, imagine literally scaring off normies. Oh come on. That was really not nice. That guy was obviously just ridiculous. People who are so openly theatrical are never dangerous. The dude wearing Land's End is the one who is going smash your head in with a meat cleaver as soon as you bend down to check the cables. That sounds like a pretty neat place to me, but I grew up with a fondness for all of that. My aunt and uncle had just moved into a 3-story row home in a bad New Jersey town. I was a kid and went up to the 3rd floor where there was a lot of wood paneling on the walls. In the corner of the hallway there was a door with no handle. You just pushed in and it opened. They had just bought the house and so they hadn't really checked out this area. My cousin and I opened the door and there were no lights or windows inside. And the light from the hall was only cast about a few feet in. The remainder was pitch black. We entered the room and soon after taking a few steps I felt my foot hit some metallic objects. So I kneeled down and just at the edge of the light I see a long, coiling belt of .30 caliber machine gun rounds. I remember feeling this blunt sensation of unease. My cousin and I then told our parents about it, and I remember them going in and raising their voices in disbelief and shock. I never knew what else was in that room, but it definitely creeped me out. You should ask them about it. Why didn't you ask later on in life? They bought a house without even looking in all the rooms. Belt-fed guns are legal, they just have to be semi-auto. I was pet-sitting for someone and they had left out a reusable shopping bag that had a bunch of sayings in it. The only one I read before GTFOing was "Children are the orgasm of life." A wooden voodoo doll-looking thing that my friend's dad bought back from his vacation to some weird third world country. It was old, so he took it to some sort of specialist who said that if it was authentic it was definitely made with human remains. My friend told me that when I was holding the thing, and as soon as he did, I noticed its teeth looked a little too real in comparison to the rest of it, so I put that shit down immediately, cuz like WTF, I'm not holding a doll made of people, that's fucked. I had friends who would visit their aunt and uncle down the street from me and we would play together. The uncle had a back porch that was filled from floor to ceiling, along all the walls, with piles of stuffed animals. It isn't creepy until you know he molested all of us when we would play at their house and later got arrested for sexual abuse of children. Hold up. Why is it always the uncle? Jesus fucking Christ, did you ever to get therapy or anything like that? I do EMS, and most of our 911 calls come from homes in very rural places. One call we had was to a man in his 50s complaining of vomiting at 3 a.m. His house was out in the middle of nowhere and looked just like the home from the first Texas Chainsaw, only more run down. We get inside and the first thing I notice is a large sliding metal door with a heavy padlock on it, and a sign that says "Keep out." Quote, the room was next to his kitchen where we found him. It didn't look like it belonged there and was clearly something he had added on himself. Something about that room gave me the creeps. Something about just me and my paramedic partner, a 130-pound 38-year-old woman, being alone in this remote house gave me the creeps. I mentioned it to our local law enforcement just in case, but they never looked into it. Back when I was 10, my friend's brother's room, I walked in and he was screwing his pillow. I laughed so hard and his mom was walking by in the hall and saw him and screamed. Was his name J. Bilzerian? Better than a coconut. Did he not stop? A picture of me. Sure, it was my mom's house, but even I don't want to see that. The entire wall of her nightstand was crusted top to floor in boogers. Like, you could not see the paint underneath because of all the boogers. I commented on it and she said it's okay because she cleans it sometimes. At which point, she grabbed a washcloth from the table and rubbed the side of the nightstand a little. Some booger flakes fell to the carpet, and then she just left them there. No dent made in the booger wall. A collection maybe? Nasty. You know, I understand that you're just answering the question, but I honestly can't imagine what we did to you that truly justifies you telling us that story. A giant black lightsaber under their bed. A Sith Lord? If what you have told me is true, you, Cajun Canadian _YT, then you will have gained my trust. You know Moff Gideon, my great-aunt's house, which was built in the late 1890s, had an upstairs that was essentially untouched by anyone for over 50 years. It was because she couldn't walk well, and the upstairs was deemed uninhabitable. Her brother, my grandfather, essentially put a locked door to her upstairs and kept the key in his house across the street. When they both had passed away, him in 1980, her in 2005, we unlocked the door to the upstairs and carefully went upstairs. It was a cobwebbed, sepia brown, time capsule of the early 1900s. Everything had a thick layer of dust. The beds were made, and there were windows that were thick with dust. Everything was really creepy and you got the feeling that you were being watched. We left soon after and relocked the doors.